I would like to call the governing board meeting of the Lammersville Unified School District to order on Wednesday, January 15th at 7 p.m. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded, so I ask you to kindly turn off and or silence your cell phone at this time. Tonight we do have some special guests with us from Cuesta Elementary School. Principal Vieira is here with one of his teachers and some of his students, and I would like to invite them to the podium at this time to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please rise. Salute pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, Board President Boulez, trustees of the Lammersville Unified School District, and Superintendent Dr. Nicholas. It is my pleasure to be here tonight to talk about the amazing things that have happened here at Cuesta this year. With me, I have our ASB leadership team under the direction of Ms. De Lamont. With me is Tanisha, Adian, Jaya, and Mahad, and they're going to share some of the great things that have happened and that will continue to happen for the rest of this year.
Hi everyone, I'm Tanisha and I'm this year's ASB president. So new to Cuesta this year, we have ASB as an elective. So before, ASB only used to meet once a week and we couldn't really get as much work done. But now because ASB is an elective, we can meet 4 times a week and we can get a bunch of work done. And we could also plan some really cool fun events like we're about to tell you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Adian, and I'm Cuesta's ASB Vice President this year. And like Tanisha was saying, one of the new additions to Cuesta new this year is our first monthly school newspaper, the Cougar Chronicles. And with this new newspaper, we have our own student-led news committee that helps spread news about school events, spirit days, and activities. This is the Cougar Chronicles, if you want to flip through it. So as you can see, we have our lunch menu and some puzzles, a staff spotlight, and an inspiring quote of the week. Through the Cougar Chronicles, we have fun puzzles and trivia for students, staff spotlights, and exciting interviews with, for example, our vice principal.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mahad, and I am Cuesta's treasurer for this year. So this year, ASB has joined with QSF to host a very successful fun run in which we made $56,604 in fun run donations. It was really fun. We had big hands for high fives and bells to cheer on the runners as they run across the track.
Hello everyone, my name is Jaya and I'm our secretary here at Cuesta. Earlier this September, we had our Dress to Impress middle school dance, which was our first dance of the year. If you don't know what Dress to Impress is, it's a popular game on Roblox, which you are given a theme and you dress up as a theme to get stars, which you will hope to get on the podium. At our dance, everyone dressed up in these amazing outfits and we even had a fashion show. And overall, I felt that this was very successful.
Okay, so as you can see here, these pictures show when Cuesta ASB participated in the Mountain House High School annual homecoming parade. And the theme for all of the schools was children's books. So our float was themed on the book Where the Wild Things Are. And as you can see, that is our float in which all of the ASB students really pitched in to make it be like that.
These are some pictures from our Leadership Development Day at the high school, where our Cuesta ASB team met with all the other leadership teams from other schools across our district, and we participated in a lot of fun teamwork and leadership building activities.
this year we also, during December, we hosted the Deck the Halls of Cuesta Week, where we had fun spirit days to really liven up the spirits of our Cuesta students. We also hosted the reindeer run. We had snow machines running, and our two mascots, Olaf and the Cuesta Cougar. They were, yeah.
And lastly, our 2025 upcoming events. Our first one is the Let's Glow Under the Sea Middle School Dance, Kindness Week, Valentine's Day Grams, our TK through 5th grade Glow Dance, March Madness Week, Menchie's fundraisers, Around the World at Cuesta Multicultural Day, Spirit Rallies, Spirit Days, and Field Day. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much for your presentation and for being here tonight. I'm excited that you actually have this as an elective and that you can do so much more, because I think you can definitely stay more engaged and have these opportunities for your fellow students. So thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it. Any comments from the board?
I just had a question. First, I'll make a comment. Very nice presentation. Thank you. Are the Cougar Chronicles available online?
We make them on something called Canva, and then we upload it into this software called Hazine, which allows us to turn it into this like digital flip book. And our ASB advisor, Ms. Delamont, we send it out to all the teachers, and they show it through their students by putting it in a Google Classroom or however they communicate with their students. So I don't think you could find it online by just searching it up. You would have to have a link.
Thank you.
Again, thank you for being here tonight. If you'd like to stay for the rest of the meeting, you're welcome to do that, but you're also welcome to go home at this time.
Can I
Thank you.
Can I make
Oh,
one
yeah,
comment?
sorry, go ahead.
Two. One is the newspaper's awesome. When I was in high school, I was super involved in our school newspaper, and I still remember the excitement that people had when the papers actually got delivered back in our day. Back then, and I'll date myself. I was a page maker expert with Adobe, so that's super cool that you guys are doing it at the middle school level. The other thing that I thought was super cool is the dance for the TK through 5. I think a lot of the dances tend to be geared towards the older students, and it's really nice to do something for the younger students as well. So I think that's commendable, but great job. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 3, roll call.
Lisa Boulay.
Here.
Vanita Daniel.
Here.
Sammy Kamodi.
Here.
Stephanie Olson. Here. Ambo.
Here.
Devika Vitulani.
Here.
Thank you. Item 4, approval and/or corrections to the agenda.
There are none.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second?
Based on a motion by trustee Olson and seconded by trustee Pombo, student preferential vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with 5 ayes and no noes. Item 5, committee reports. District Advisory Committee, that is me. We met, the District Advisory Committee met earlier this evening. And at this meeting, Assistant Superintendent Sharp presented the data dashboard infographic and talked about the 8 priorities for the LCAP and our 3 goals for Lammersville Unified School District, including closure of the opportunity gaps, instruction and curriculum efficacy, 21st century outcomes, and stakeholder communications. She also reviewed the metrics that we use for evaluating those goals and showed us where to find that infographic on the LUSD website. And this is really a very comprehensive snapshot of our district and our successes throughout the district. There's a lot of data there, and a lot of people have put in incredible amounts of time and information into that data graphic. So thank you to everybody who worked on that. And that's all I have for the District Advisory Committee. Item B, District English Learner Advisory Committee, Trustee Modi.
Nothing to report. Our next meeting is next week, I believe, on Thursday.
Thank you. Item C, Education Committee, Trustee Pombo.
Yes, we met last week and had a presentation on the LCAP and also a presentation on the new course offerings at Mountain House High School, which will be before the board later in this agenda.
Thank you. Item D, Facilities Committee, Trustee Olson.
The next Facilities Committee meeting will be on Thursday, February 6th at 6:30 PM here in the District Office Boardroom.
Thank you. Item E, Policy Committee, Trustee Daniel.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Item F, Safety Committee, Trustee Pombo.
Yes, the next Safety Committee meeting is January 22nd at 3:45 at the Professional Development Center.
Thank you. And item G, Wellness Committee, Trustee Olson.
The next Wellness Committee meeting will be on February 12th at 3:45 PM at the Professional Development Center.
Thank you. Item 6, Governing Board Reports. Student Board Member Vitellani.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you had a fantastic New Year start. So to start off with Mountain House High School ASB updates, we have our Tri-Valley Leadership Conference this Friday at California High School, and we're extremely excited to event and learn lots of new things. Next week is our Snow Coming Week, which will lead up to Winter Formal, which will be held on January 25th on Saturday. We also have our Cultural Olympics rally coming up on Wednesday, and we're extremely excited to show off our culture and sports gears. For club updates, DECA has regionals starting this Friday through Sunday and mock trial competitions beginning on January 28th, and we wish both of the teams a very best of luck. For additional high school updates, we have the extremely exciting District Honors Music Concert on January 31st, and the senior trip this year has been announced for Universal Studios. And that concludes my report for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Modi.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Trustee Daniel.
So last couple of weeks have been a learning experience for me. And during the last meeting, Dr. Nicholas had requested for one experienced board member to attend, to be a part of the contractors' interviews. And I was actually interested to be a part of the interview process. However, that would have been my first time, so I did not express my interest. And then I thought about it, and I processed that if the knowledge is not passed or shared onwards, and how could someone new gain the experience? So I reached out to Dr. Nicholas, and he was kind enough to understand, and he said it made sense. So I was able to be a part of the interview process along with Trustee Pombo. I have to say that it was a very good experience, and I believe you all unanimously came to a decision, which is on the board approval for this agenda for today. And this took place on Jan 7th. On Jan 8th, I attended the groundbreaking ceremony for Neighborhood B Park. That's at the baseball field at Evelyn Costa Elementary, and I'm really excited for the access to more facilities for our students. On Jan 11th, I attended the Masters in Governance School Finance Part 1 and Part 2 at West Sacramento. This was my very first in-person MIC. And all the others were virtual, so there were only 6 participants in that particular training, and it was more like a one-on-one learning session. I was actually thinking about our business services team, led by Assistant Sup Gloria Grivelva and Director of Fiscal Services Alvina Kaiser at that moment. I was being very grateful to every one of them for their effort in maintaining such an effective and very efficient report, because we went through the interim reports and we understood all the details within the report. So you were on my thoughts on that day. And we were able to review the interim report, which is part of our agenda today too. There was another thing I felt there on that training session. I actually felt good about myself. The coach who was instructing, who was providing the training, she said, okay, so all 6 of you are here on a Saturday morning, and you woke up early to be here at Sacramento, you're giving your time, and you're learning to provide the right service for your district. So she said that not many may know that you've actually given your family time to be there, but we appreciate you, we know. So be thankful. We are thankful for your time. And truly, it made me feel good at that point. And I believe that feeling good about oneself and understanding our self value is so important because it's just motivating me to do more. Um, and that has motivated me to sign up for my Make 5, which is the last one during March, and then I'm graduating it. So, at a personal level, I have to say that I was blessed to spend a family time during the break with my kids back from college, and every day was so precious with them. I would like to lastly wish everyone a very happy, healthy, blessed New Year. And there ends my report.
Thank you. Trustee Pombo.
On January 7th, as Trustee Daniel mentioned, we did the contractor interviews that will be on the agenda later today. On the 8th, I also attended the groundbreaking for the Bethany, or the Neighborhood B Park, and then later that evening attended the Bethany Dare graduation. On the 9th, I attended the Education Committee meeting. On the 10th, Dr. Nicholas and I met with County Supervisor Rickman to discuss the effects of growth on Mountain House and the LUSD School District. On the 13th, I attended a CSBA budget workshop on the state budget and where it looks like we're headed for the coming fiscal year. And earlier this afternoon, I attended the wrestling tournament at the league wrestling tournament at Mountain House High School, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Trustee Olson.
Thank you. On January 8th, I attended the Bethany Dare graduation along with several of my other fellow trustees, and it was the first Dare graduation of the year, and I'm immensely grateful that Officer Abercrombie came out of retirement directly after he retired to help our district as we forge ahead and start looking at ways to continue that type of program in our district. So that was wonderful, and there was so much talent at Bethany that it was just great to see their little. I love the Dare Idol. I'm curious what songs they'll like sing to, and it was wonderful. And I also that evening I attended the city council meeting to report on our district as my duty as clerk. And then on January 10th, I went to Delta College to attend the San Joaquin County Honor Choir, Band, and Orchestra performances. And I'm immensely proud of our district, Lammersville. I was able to catch the music teacher and just asked, roughly what the numbers were. And we had almost 1/5 of the 285 students that made the county honor choir, band, or orchestra. 1/5 of those students were Lammersville students. And if you look at the orchestra, all the first chair, the concert violinist, the first everything except for viola was Mountain House. So we had, and 3 of the 6 solos were given to Mountain House choir students. And it was a wonderful performance. I'm really grateful that we have a wonderful County Office of Education that helps us to provide opportunities for our students to connect with students outside of our district and to really shine. This was one of those moments, and I'm grateful for all the efforts that are taken here in our district to provide these visual and performing arts opportunities for our students. And on January 14th, yesterday, I attended the Cuesta JV girls basketball game at Bethany. And I love seeing that Bethany has cheerleaders, JV and varsity cheerleaders at the middle school level, and they were amazing. And it just added a fun little element, and I love seeing that grow down from the high school to have these opportunities for our middle school students. And so I really enjoyed that. And the parking lot was full. I came from work and I was like, Bethany has a huge parking lot, and it was full. So it's nice to see that involvement. And then today I was at Costa for a JV girls basketball game. and another enjoyable experience, and grateful for all the opportunities our children have. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. On January 8th, along with Trustee Daniel and Trustee Pombo, I attended, and Dr. Nicholas as well, the Neighborhood Bee Park groundbreaking that's adjacent to Evelyn Costa. And then I followed that with attendance at the Bethany Dare graduation. And I'd like to echo what Trustee Olson said about Officer Abercrombie and his continued dedication to this district and to this program, because I think it's really a great value for our students. And then today I had a site visit at Cordis, and so I want to thank Principal McDonald for his time. I think he's really created an exciting culture at Cordis. His students and staff seem to have a lot of respect for him, and it looks like they all just really want to do well just because of how much they respect him. So he's created a great thing at Costa, and I enjoyed my time with him today. And that's all I have for my report. Item 7, receiving of public comments. I don't have any blue cards, but does anybody from the audience wish to make a comment at this time? Okay, please come to the podium. I'm actually going to read the verbiage we need to read before public comments. While I'm doing that, if you want to grab a blue comment card in the back, you can fill that out with your information. The entire board does appreciate hearing from members of the community and public at large. The board shall give members of the public an opportunity to address the board either before or during the board's consideration of each agenda item, Government Code Section 54954.3. At a time so designated on the agenda, members of the public also may bring before the board matters that are not listed on the agenda of a regular meeting. The board may refer such a matter to the superintendent or designee or take it under advisement, but shall not take action at that time. The board may place the matter on the agenda of a subsequent meeting for discussion or action. Individual speakers shall be allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda or non-agenda item. The board shall limit the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. If your topic is on the agenda, we will we'll have you speak right before we have the agenda item. If it's not an agenda item, then we'll have you speak now.
That is not on the agenda.
Okay.
Good evening, board. I just had a quick question regarding basketball court rentals for the elementary schools. Me and my daughter are both part of a group here that we play AAU basketball, and it gets hard during basically throughout the year to get indoor access to basketball practice. So we have to go to Tracy or we have to practice outside. And we're just trying to see, it used to be where it was first come, first serve for rentals. And then all of a sudden last year they changed it to how long you've been renting for. And we're just trying to see if maybe we can go back to first come, first serve. And like we've talked to some of the janitors where we do actually somehow get into a court that they say most of the people that come through or that are assigned the court for the night or something, they don't show up. And we usually practice between 3 to 4 days a week, and going into like the Bella Vista Academy or somewhere in the Tracy School District, we have to go all the way over there, and we have like 13, 14 girls from Mountain House that, we all have to travel out there. So we're just trying to see if we keep it local, and we represent Mountain House, as when we go out to play as well.
Thank you so much for your comments. Because this is not an agenda-ized item, unfortunately, we can't respond to your comments, but we do appreciate your coming to see us. I might recommend, however, Our facilities committee has a lot to do with rentals of the courts, and I know space is tight. So if you would like to share your information at the facilities committee, that would be a good place to start.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Karthikeyan?
Hey, good evening, everyone. Yeah, this infograph, it's a really useful tool, like where on the dashboard, every parent would like to know this information in detail, and exactly been given, but it's did not categorize to be in, I feel personally, like if I could see filtered or classified by categorized by a school, like I am one of a parent of Goddess, so maybe each parents might also would be interested to see by school wise. So I would like to make this point.
Thank you
That
very
would be
much. We
helpful.
appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Item 8, consent items for consideration. Actions proposed for consent are consistent with the approved practices of the district and are deemed routine in nature. Trustees receive board agenda background information in advance of scheduled meetings and are prepared to vote with knowledge on the consent items. Item A, governing board meeting minutes from the regular meeting December 18th, 2024. Item B, contracts under $50,000. Item C, ratification of certificated and classified personnel actions. Item D, updated 2024-2025 fundraisers. Item E, ratification of 24-25 intra-district transfer requests. Item F, ratification of 2025-2026 inter-district transfer requests. Item G, ratification of warrant list for December 2024. Item H, ratification of school-sponsored overnight trips. Item I, acceptance of donations, $164.45 from Safeway Supermarket for LUSD Winter Challenge 2024, and $1,003 estimated value for an Insignia 65-inch Class F30 Series LED 4K UHD TV with an Omicron mobile TV stand from DonorsChoose.org for Mrs. Palmer's classroom at Hanson. Would any member of the board like to pull any of these items for discussion or special consideration?
Move to approve consent items for consideration.
Second.
Based on a motion by trustee Olson and seconded by trustee Daniel, student preferential vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with 5 ayes and no noes. Madam Clerk, would you please do the honors?
With pleasure, Madam President. We would like to welcome Rayleigh Gabbard, noon duty supervisor, and Sasi Rekha Sathya Prabhu, special education instructional aide. I apologize for any mispronunciations, but welcome to the Lammersville family.
Thank you. Item 9, district administrative reports. Item A, superintendent's report with a facilities update.
Yeah, before I do that, we have some good news coming out of the Girl Scouts. We have a student here who earned the Girl Scout Gold Award, which is the highest honor a Girl Scout can achieve. And only about 5% of the girls amongst the $1.2 million girls worldwide get the award. So we want to congratulate Avni Agarwal from Mountain House High School, and her award was to the award is based on creating a space for young girls to explore engineering and STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, in a safe and supportive environment where they are the majority, not the minority. So no boys allowed, or at least on a smaller number. And so the idea is that STEM and engineering is a safe space for girls, and she won the award. So congratulations to her. And then I'm going to give an update on facilities, but I'm going to go down to the podium. So give me a second, please.
And you asked that we ask as many questions as possible while you're giving the presentation. Is that correct?
Yes, because my ADD never has any problems with being disrupted, so that'll be good. No, so Good evening, Madam President, board members, Madam Student Trustee. It's my pleasure tonight to speak about facilities funding and the ongoing quest of our school district to fund the facilities based on the demands of growth in the community. So this is a map of Mountain House, and this rendering has all the colors because what I'm about to present is going to explain the pathway to full completion of the master plan, the Mountain House master plan. And so I'm going to start at the big picture level. I'm going to cover some key terms. I'm going to talk about some key strategies that we have to use in order to get funds because they don't come in a timely manner. And then I'm going to talk specifically about College Park and Northern Byron Highway. All right, so very quickly, as we like to say, Lammersville Elementary School was established in 1876 during the Rutherford B. Hayes administration. It was a one-school district until 2004 with the onset of the creation of Mountain House. Wickland was built and opened in 2004, Bethany in 2007, Cuesta in 2010, Mountain House High School Phase 1 in 2014, Altamont 2014, Mountain House High School Phase 2 began to open new buildings in 2017, Hanson in 18, Cordis in 20, Costa in 23, and Neighborhood J is currently going through the approval process, is slated to open in 26. And then guesstimations are the next school in 29, and the final school to fill out the master plan will be sometime in the 2030s, probably 2035. And again, like I said, these represent the full build out of the master plan. So there's some key terms that I'm going to cover tonight, but for someone who might be listening in the audience or at home or new board members, there's a few key terms that when you deal with them every day, you say them as if everybody knows, so I want to make sure. So the Mountain House Master Plan is the vision that was created when the approval of building Mountain House came upon the scene. It started in '94, and that is what has been rolled out year after year and where we're at today. Amongst the master plan, there are 3 specific plans, 1, 2, and 3, that are, they generate the student number or the student generation number about the number of students that are going to be in a particular school site. It also gives the parameters of what a neighborhood's going to be, from street lights to the size of trees and things like that. So specific plan 1 is EF and G, which is Wickland, Bethany, and Altamont. 3 is College Park, and 2 is every one of the other villages. A community facilities district is a funding mechanism in which taxes are collected from homeowners and pooled by the county that eventually come back to the district to pay for K-8 schools in our community. The 1998 mitigation agreement, and I'll be referencing this a lot in the presentation tonight, are the rules of engagement between the developer or a builder and the school district, and it's the one means that the district has to leverage its case for funding. Melrose bonds and state matching funds are the mechanism to fund the building of K-8 schools. Developer fees, and this is one I'll take a little time on, developer fees are a loan. When funds aren't available to build a school and the developers have to front money, they come kicking and screaming. In my time, in the 12 years I've been here, we've had it happen twice. But it is a loan, and they get paid interest on that, and the interest is paid based on a construction index originally based in Marshall Swift, and so that fluctuates. So the rate of payback they get on their loan, which is called a developer fee, fluctuates depending on how the market is. A general obligation bond is when community members vote to raise their own taxes to fund a capital project or projects within a community. And certificate of compliance I'll reference further in this presentation. That is the one bullet that the district has to leverage developers when they're not cooperating, which is based in the mitigation agreement. So a certificate of compliance is issued when developers have met their statutory mitigation responsibilities in a community they develop. So that typically comes in the form of parks and schools. So if all of the needs of the district have been met, we issue a certificate of compliance, and that's part of the approval process for a neighborhood development. All right, so very quickly, K-8 schools and Mountain House are built based on a combination of Melrose bonds and state matching funds. In order to get state matching funds, there has to be a state construction bond. It's based in a long-standing program called, very creatively, the State Construction Bond Program. And that is the means in which we pay for our schools. What I will lay out for you is a long history of ill-timed access to funds and the district's constant fight to overcome bad timing and lack of funds to get schools built on time. In terms of Mountain House High School, when the master plan was developed, whether or not Mountain House would actually have a high school and the Lammersville Unified host it was a question. So there is no funding mechanism within the master plan. So Mountain House High School was paid for by a combination, both phase 1 and 2, developer fees, mitigation fees, state matching funds, and a significant portion from our general obligation bond called Measure L from 2016. So the mitigation agreement, rules of engagement between the district, the builders, and the developers, in particular the developers. And we've had a number of amendments, but it kind of tells you the history of some of the negotiations that have gone on. So the first amendment in 2002 really had to do with identifying that the district would go from a K-8 district to a K-12 district, which is Union to Unified, and it also named Wickland. In the Second Amendment in 2006 identified the funding, and you'll be shocked to hear that there was a fight between the district and the developer about what the cost of the school would be. The district won. A first Third Amendment, which is the high school one, was the developer fees repayment schedule. So a developer fee of $52 million went forward to assist the first phase of Mountain House High School's construction. The loan and the repayment schedule works like a loan. So we pay the capital back, the principal back, plus interest, and it'll probably be 35 years or more before we pay it all off. The elementary Third Amendment has to do with a developer challenge to the use of the district of general obligation funds to subsidize the construction of Hanson Elementary. That was a negotiated settlement, but generally the district won because we subsidized Hanson's construction the way we wanted it to. The Fourth Amendment had to do with the district negotiating in 2022 the acquisition of 19 additional acres located just south of the high school proper campus. And in return, age-restricted communities in I were allowed to be flipped to market rate, and a small portion of H, which is Cuesta, was also allowed to be flipped. The Fifth Amendment was the district identified funds that could be reimbursed from the CFD 2007-1. This was done in 2023. We were able to pool together $2.5 million that the district from other funds put forward in the construction of Cuesta, and we were able to reclaim those through a process. And that had to be approved by the developer, and yes, we had to negotiate it, and yes, it was more complicated than it needed to be. And they did try to get things that they didn't necessarily need as a result. But we got what we needed. And finally, the Sixth Amendment solidified an agreement in 2024 for all the properties that are all of the villages that are going to produce a school north of Byron Highway would charge an additional tax, which will help mitigate construction escalation costs. And we would do a land sale transaction, which garners half of the appraised value of the school's property at the time of receiving state matching funds. It's $5 million for doing land sale at Costa. So imagine if the property values of the three schools go up, whatever half of that property value is, that'll come back to help pay for the school's construction. Okay, the role of a CFD is very simple. It's a means of raising money for capital projects through a special tax that's imposed on home builders or homeowners. So tonight we're putting the final touches on the most recent one, 2024, but there's one in 2002, 07, 14, 19, and now 2024. And that is the mechanism to take the Melrose bond or to create tax a holding area with the county for taxes to come back for construction of the school. And it can go for the funding of K-8 school construction. And if through the mechanisms where the funds come in and the timing, if there's additional funds, we could put it towards other district support facilities within a set of expected rules. All right, so the state funding system, I alluded to this earlier, that the state funding system has not kept up with the needs of the community, and it certainly has not funded well-timed projects. So it's created a lot of difficulties for the school district to access funds when schools need to be built. So first and foremost, it has never kept up with the pace of growth in Mountain House. It has not helped Lammersville School District fund its schools for the school that's being built. Why did this happen? So in 2014, Governor Brown didn't support a state construction bond. The legislature, both houses in California, passed unanimously a state construction bond support, and he essentially put the kibosh on that, and a 2014 state construction bond did not go forward, throwing off the timing of all the schools we've built since 2014's access to state funds. And it's like a domino effect, but the dominoes get larger as time goes on. So in 2016, through an initiative process, because the governor did not support this, they looped around the Sacramento version and did a state initiative, and that passed. That was Prop 51. Prop 51 was a $9 billion state construction bond. And by the time it rolled forward and they started selling bonds, there were $12 billion of asks. So it was already inadequate by the time people started receiving funds. So we benefited from that. We had a number of projects on that list, but we were already behind and waiting desperately for the next construction bond to go forward. So at the time when we were building Cordis, 2020, Prop 13, a state construction bond, was moved forward. They called it Prop 13, which made it controversial and confusing, because there's another Prop 13, which is about property taxes from the late 70s and tied to taxation, and it did not pass. Therefore, further throwing off our access to funds in a timely manner. In 2022, we were promised a state construction bond would go forward. That was during COVID. It did not. In November of 2024, Prop 2 was put forward. It passed with a lot of support, and it's a $10 billion state construction bond. So this is how it breaks down. So it's $10 billion for K-12 and community colleges, $3.3 billion are for new construction. That's primarily our focus. There's $4 billion for modernization, $1.5 billion for community colleges, and a combination of $1.2 billion for career technical ed and charter schools. We are currently waiting for funding to come in from Costa, which opened 2 years ago, Lammersville Elementary School modernization, which has been on the list for, I think, 4 years, and the high school expansion project, which is currently being built. Very soon to go on the state funding list is Neighborhood J Schools plan. The second that it is approved by the Department of School Architecture, we will be walking it across the street to be on the list. And so that's the process we follow. It's very important for the board and the community to understand that we already need the next state construction bond after Prop 2 to pass, because it is highly unlikely with $3.3 billion available in new construction that we will be able to get neighborhood I and K's construction's costs paid for out of Prop 2. So we are already behind in a weird way. So it will continue. So part of my role tonight is to explain to the board and the community the complications of funding school facilities, in part because I think some people think it's really, we have the money. When it's time to build a school, we build it, and that's the way it goes. But really, it's not. It's really it takes 3 years to build a school, about 15 to 18 months to get it designed and approved, and then it takes about 15 to 18 months to build it. You can build it a little faster sometimes if the conditions are right. But really what this is a fight. It's a long-standing fight with developers and builders in the state funding system that need to be done. So all of those dates, which predate me in 2010 and 12, but since I've come on board in 2013, all of those years we've presented a similar presentation around the challenges of funding and the needs of the district. So the funding chase. So these are the lists of the strategies that we have used in order to get the schools opened on time. Because to lay out very simply, if a bunch of houses get built and the school's not ready, those kids still have to go to school. So we have a drop dead date of July to get the schools turned over from the contractor who built the school, and that's how that is our mechanism. And so therefore, where some projects can be delayed, the opening of a school cannot. So the 5004 application process race, that's the application that puts the school district's project on the state funding list. What I mean by race is the second we get approval, we run to get it on the list. State construction bond advocacy. Mr. Pombo is part of the CSBA delegate process. We have lobbied CSBA for support for state construction bonds. We belong to and have worked with the California or the Coalition of Adequate School Housing, CASH, to advocate. They're the lead advocates for state construction bonds. More specifically, Mello-Roos bond timing. We do not sell Mello-Roos bonds until projects have been approved, mapped as developed, approved by the city, approved by the county, and in the perfect scenario, model houses are being built, infrastructure is in. That's how we get the most money. We often get pressured by developers to just sell it on undeveloped land. You can get money now. And our response is, we don't do it till it's approved and mapped as developed, or developed as mapped, because that's where we get the most money. And the more money you have, the more things you can do for kids. Developer fees and negotiations with developers. We've had 2 successful negotiations, both of which came with a massive fight. When I say fight, it's a bunch of bureaucratic back and forth, contract language, people getting wound up a little bit. And in the end, we've successfully achieved developer fees when we need them. And this is one of the other mechanisms. State matching funds and CFD surplus. So we look for timing for uses of matching funds that are available. And also if there's a surplus in a CFD, I referenced squeezing $2.5 million out of CFD 2007-1 is an example of that. Measure L general obligation bond, again, with the support of the community, 62% approval. In 2016, a $56 million bond was passed. The vast majority went to the high school, but we've also done maker spaces and other projects within the use of that money. And with the high school fields project that's coming up in 2025, that $56 million will be fully expended. We financed the school construction project because the state bond didn't pass. The kids were there. The negotiation was going nowhere, and so we borrowed money. We've refinanced CFDs, meaning when they reach maturity, which is about 10 years, you can refinance them and pull money out to use for projects. And ultimately, we've used on a smaller level commercial developer fees in a pinch. So those are all ways we chase money to make the magic happen so we can celebrate ribbon cuttings and groundbreakings. So the funding time lapse. So Wickland was built on a combination of Mello-Roos bonds and developer fees because there was no state bonds coming in the first school. Bethany was built with Mello-Roos bonds and state funds. Cuesta, Mello-Roos bonds and developer fees because the drag started to happen. The state funds were late. Altamont was built with Mello-Roos and state funds, but they were 2 years late. For every year that a project sits on the state funding list, it gathers interest. But in this case, the state allocation board kept the interest accrued over those 2 years, which was approximately $1.9 million. For 2.5 years, we fought to get that money back. It went to court. We weren't part of the lawsuit, but we joined as enthusiastic supporters. And in the end, that money was doled out to other entities in the system. Mountain House High School Phase 1, developer fees after a big fight, mitigation fees and state funds paid for the first $93 million of that project. Hanson, Mello-Roos bonds and the state funds were 3 years late, so we used money from Measure L as a subsidy. Mountain House Phase 2, all exclusively paid for by Measure L. Cordis, Mello-Roos bonds, state construction funds were 3 years late. That was forced us to finance $28 million of its construction, and that was a direct result of Prop 13 failing. Costa was built by a combination of Mello-Roos bonds, developer fees. The 5004 is languishing currently on the state construction list, and we had to deal with something we hadn't done on this scale, and I'll speak to it later in the presentation, developer non-performance. So LUSD, with its own money that was supposed to be used to pay off the financing of Cordis, had to be used for the construction contract because of developer non-performance. And finally, with Neighborhood J, we're in the process of gathering the money now, but it's in the planning phase, and we anticipate a groundbreaking in late May. So now I'm going to get more specific into the two projects that are the most complicated of our experience here in Mountain House. So Lammersville Unified is going to build or absorb growth in two large projects that are beginning both in the south and north part of town. So the first part I'm going to go into is College Park. So if you look at that map, there's a table, and to the right of that table with a green line going diagonally. Ignore that. That's Cordis. Those houses are built. Those kids go to school at Cordis. Anything below the dashed line, below that that's Grant Line Road. That is College Park. It had a specific plan that was more complicated than the others. But if you see in the table, there's a list of different builders and developers that are associated with that project, which has made it significantly more complicated than dealing with just one developer. So this is the current list of builders, developers that we're dealing with. So phase one, and I'm going to call it neighborhood A simply because most of the houses were built in neighborhood A. There was one developer who presented himself as a master developer. We negotiated with him. His company is Mountain House Investors. And in those houses that currently exist, about 550 students currently attend Costa who live in Costa. Phase two, this is a story that's in the making, an adventure that's yet to be told. So as you can see, there are the Sandu Pulte project, the Ravani Shea project, the True Point project, Mountain House Investors project, the Rurker Sandu project, and potential additional projects in area B9, B10, and A8, and also some apartments that may be built. So we are currently planning for approximately 586 additional students to come in, and we will be planning, if these other projects move forward, for how we're going to address space issues. So if you take a look at this table, I referenced specific plans 1, 2, and 3, and that specific plan 3 is the means of student generation and how developers communicate to the school district student generation. So if you look up in yellow in the upper left, it says neighborhood AB, that's College Park. If you go down to the middle, you'll see a yellow area that says 1,085, and it says students at build out for K-8. So the basis of the decisions about building Costa were based on that number. And just so you know, the original number was 1,144. So that's the number and the basis for what we believe were going to be students generated out of College Park. Anything below there is neighborhood D, which is part of Cordis and not really part of this discussion. So here are some of the challenges that came about. So College Park was the most affected neighborhood in Mountain House as a result of the Great Recession in 2008. And that's because there's multiple landowners and multiple developers and bankruptcy that had a significant impact on all progress down there. The size, scope, and scale of Costa and where those decisions and discussions were had in 2019-20, meaning that we had the information at the time that we had. We based our decisions and discussions on specific Plan 3, in particular the table in the last slide. And we knew that the specific Plan 3 was approved by the city and the county, so we knew it was a formal official process and document. One of the things we knew that would be complicating is there is no mitigation agreement specific to College Park, and part of that is wasn't officially part of the Mountain House master plan, and the word annexations had to happen in a lot of complicated things, but there's no mitigation agreement. So we had to start with the developer from scratch, where all the other developments, including north of Byron Highway, have a mitigation agreement that are attached. So again, the student generation rate for that project based on the specific plan was 1,085. And the specific plan narrative gave two options to the district, and it was the basis for deciding to do one school versus two small schools. What I can tell you now is the specific Plan 3, the student generation rate, and the total housing units that were communicated at the time of its approval were both inaccurate and inadequate. And so those are part of the complications I've been referencing in this presentation. So getting into a little bit further details in College Park, simply because it's been so complicated. Neighborhood A, we began the design of the school in 2020 based on specific Plan 3, and we worked specifically with the master developer from Mountain House Investors. It was at that time that it was recommended by me to the board to do a economies of scale analysis, and it made no sense to go forward with 2 small schools because you'd have to build 2 multi-purpose rooms, 2 administrative rooms, 2 libraries, 2 band rooms, 2 sets of fields, and that was accruing way too much costs. When you add that to the post-COVID construction market, which was insanely high, the first estimate I'll tell you was $70 million. When I was done yelling at the person who brought me that information, we began a process of cutting it down to what was already a ridiculously high amount of $60 million. And that's, excuse me, soft costs and the cost of construction and the engineering and the fees and all that. And so in that time, the board gave me direction to build a 2-story school for additional space because we anticipated there might be more students than that was anticipated, and to negotiate additional space. So the only campus of a K-8 school in Mountain House, Lammersville Unified, that's above 16 acres is Costa, and that's 18 acres. So I have an 18-acre site with 2-story buildings, which means we have ample space for future needs. As we're going through all that, there was a dispute that began between the master developer and a builder that had been sold property. And so what happened was, very briefly, the master developer made decisions about how things were going to go to get the certificate of compliance. When we wrote that, we gave away our silver bullet and our leverage. When the conversation shifted to the builder, the responsibility for paying any funding shortfalls or if funds were late would have fallen on the shoulders exclusively of the master developer. But the master developer wanted to have the builders he was selling to bear the burden of some of the cost. And so that dispute delayed the construction of the school by close to a year. And so while all that's going on, we use the certificate of compliance for any future projects as leverage to get the dispute to end. And as a result, we ended up with what is called an indirect and direct cost term sheet agreement. But essentially, we were able to get a commitment for developer fees, which helped pay for the construction of Costa. We were able to get a process to get the Mello-Roos bonds the way we needed them, which included land sale. And we were also to charge an additional tax, which helped mitigate the extreme escalation of construction costs. But it also set the stage for the district having to negotiate with future developers or their subsequent builders for funds, because this is a 2-part series. I'll say it that way. So phase 2, it gets more interesting. All right, so in Neighborhood B, and again, this isn't exclusive to Neighborhood B, but just for the sake of simplicity, there is no master developer. There were 2 primary landholders who were asked to play the role of master developer, in particular the one with the most land holdings. And what they chose to do is what I'm going to call professionally developer non-performance. It's a term that's in the mitigation agreement, and it's the term that the district can use if a developer isn't stepping up when there's a funding shortfall. And in this negotiation, there was a funding shortfall because there wasn't enough money to pay for the complete construction contract for Costa. So the developers are very deft and figured out very quickly that we didn't have a mitigation agreement, so we couldn't make a shortfall claim. So they didn't have any pressure legally to have to pay a shortfall fund. So they very politely and respectfully had a number of meetings with the district and slow walked the negotiation until the district had to act on its own. And so they had no incentive to sign a deal, the mitigation agreement. Therefore, they didn't have to pay their own money to finish the construction. We paid for it because we were the responsible party for the contract. And so the financing of Cordis was done to wait for the state funds to come in. Paying off the financing was the plan when the money came in. Because of developer non-performance, we used that money to finish off the construction project so the school would open on time. And so that's how that adventure played out. So at the end of the day, this means that we figured out the better way to approach this is we're going to use the certificate of compliance, and every project that comes forward, instead of being a complicator, is just simply going to be a conversation of sign this agreement if you want to build a house, and if you don't, you're not going to get a permit to build a house, and you're going to pay these things up front. And so I want to give credit to the board, and I want to give credit to the team. Costa Elementary opened on time in August of 2023, and on a day of 103, we did a beautiful ribbon cutting ceremony, and though it was hot, it was a beautiful day, and nobody who attended, other than a few people, knew what the adventure that led to that school opening. So now here's where we're at. We've kind of turned the tide. That means the district has turned the tide. So in 2024, we came to an agreement with Pulte, who's a builder that one of the developers sold to, and we were able to create a model that other developers / builders are going to have to agree to that will help reward the district for its efforts in terms of making sure that Costa got built and opened on time. So there are 3 tracks that are associated with the 2 large landholders. And those 3 tracks are when they want to build, and Pulte being the first one and the model creator, those other entities will sign the same one. So the key part is when you have financing, the pain of that is you have to pay interest. And we are asking those 3 tracks and the entities that represent them to pay the interest payment on the financing, since we were supposed to not have to pay that because we were supposed to pay that off. So there'll be little to no cost to the district. Also, we are charging interest to those 3 entities for what is a loan. The subsidy is a loan that the district gave to the project in the name of the builders who were non-performing, so that we could reclaim something for our efforts to keep that going. So those 2 funding sources, this is still yet to be completed because we have 2 more negotiations to complete, but the Pulte model is going to be applied to those tracks. Secondly, on all other additional tracks in College Park that are not part already of the approved project, they will agree to the additional special tax that the master developer in Neighborhood A agreed to, along with all the other projects. And we are asking that they give an additional amount from their fees to help assist with high school facilities. So we're adding 15 classrooms right now. The district has pulled money from other sources through all those things we do, but this is going to start to gather money to pay for facility needs at the high school. So we are currently negotiating with one of those because they're currently building neighborhoods. So simply stated through all this, anyone down there that wants to get a building permit from the district needs a certificate of compliance. In order to get that, they're going to have to agree to these provisions. And then finally, Prop 2, we're not sure when the money's going to come in. I asked our contact with the state, and he thinks sometime in the mid to latter part of 2025, the first bonds will be sold, and that will help bring us the cost of money for state funds. So this is really important for the future, and it just needs to be clearly said. I said earlier that specific Plan 3 was inadequate and inaccurate, and this is the net result. We will need to add additional classrooms at some point in time for the students in College Park, at Costa, and possibly another school. I mean, but just generally speaking, that's what we know that to be true. It'll determine at the rate, when that happens will be based on the rate of housing. They're behind north of Byron Highway. They're going to be competing. The most number of houses we've built in a year, I think, was 400. So at 400, this is a few years out. I would think. The 2 extra acres, the 2-story buildings is where the space is going to come from, and the additional Mello-Roos bonds that can be sold on these additional projects will be the funding source for those classrooms. So we have the space, we have the source of the money, though it's not here yet, and so it'll be a matter of timing of when we want to do that and how big the amount of classrooms would be. But all these considerations of the funding source, the number of classrooms, program placement, and such will be a determination for College Park. But to defend the district without being defensive, the specific plan laid out the student generation. The school was built based on that student generation. The amount of money available at the time built Costa, And irrespective of additional pressures down the road, that was the best we could do in the conditions at the time. All right, north of Byron Highway. So this is a map. It represents the number of housing units north of Byron Highway. So if you start, I'm going to start with the 956. That's neighborhood J. That's where the next school is going to be built. 956 units. North of that is 1163. That's neighborhood K. And to the left of that, 1312. That's neighborhood I. Then if you see at the bottom, there's 870 senior and 610. The 610 is market rate housing. 870 is going to be age restricted. So if you add all those up, you get 4,041. So when you do the simple math, 3 schools going into 4,041, you get just over 900 kids a school. It's less expensive to build the same footprint for a school in an architectural sense. So 3 schools of 900 students in neighborhood J, I, and K is the future of the build out of Mountain House master plan and the Lammersville School District within it. But it will take the 610 in L, neighborhood L, to fill up the student space, which will be J and K ultimately. All right, so I explained that already, how we got to 900 student schools. J is going first. In the short term, the 956 units and currently being developed 150 units in K will be the first students that go to J school. I am predicting now, and I could be wrong, so this is a prediction, not a fact, that because of complications, I predict that neighborhood I school will be the second school built, but it also is the simplest one because the 1,312 units creates a 900 kid school. It's the cleanest one. And then neighborhood K school will be built and helped filled by students in the 610 for neighborhood L. So the last school is going to be the most complicated, but I predict it'll be a combination of, it will be K plus some fed kids from L. All right, the negotiations with neighborhood J began with CalPERS's representative Mountain House developers. CalPERS in the summer of 2023 quietly sold its investment. CalPERS has been around since 2007. The new developer is a gentleman named Mr. Sandu, Mike Sandu, and he has an entity, a consultant that he works with called Mountain House Developers, who we've worked with going back well over a decade. There is a CFD 2024-1 that tonight is going to be finally approved, the final approvals for it, and a funding agreement to garner additional special tax to assist with the price escalations of construction contracts has been signed into agreement. And again, a mitigation agreement already exists. So the complications of College Park don't exist here because one master developer signed an agreement that made sense to address the issues down there. We are doling out certificate of compliance project by project to ensure compliance of our needs. It's the first time in my time here that we've been well ahead of it. So presently, Lennar has a certificate of compliance for 503 units, and they've requested for more permits outside of that. And so we're working with them on a second certificate of compliance. And finally, each builder that comes along, we're going to go through this same process just because of the complications. All right, so this is a very important fact to put on the record. There will not be enough funds generated out of those 4 north of Byron Highway neighborhoods, J, K, I, and L, to build 4 schools. So somewhere down the road, I predict that in neighborhood L, those 870 age-restricted units, the developer's going to say they want to flip it to market rate. I told them when they told me about the 610, I told them, you guys are going to try to flip this other. And so that can't happen because there won't be enough money to generate a school. So I just want to put it on the record that we're going to use up everything we have. It's very, very expensive to build a school now. And that's just the nature of what's happening north of Byron Highway. 3 900 kid schools, based on the information I presented earlier, is what they need for the student generation in the specific plan. All right, very briefly, on the left, The red circles the 19 acres. If you look north of that, you can see the baseball and softball field at Mountain House High School. That is the 19 acres the district negotiated, and that is we have a project that is being approved tonight that will help fund 6 acres of fields on that property. That property is a relief valve and or a space for future needs of the high school. It's not ideal because you would think the developer would have given us the land just south of the campus, but that's not how things rolled out, and that the district had no control over that. And then the renderings to the right are the new 15 classroom buildings that is going in right now. So in total, as the master plan builds out, there are 11 feeder schools into Mountain House High School. The original master plan said that it would be 2,400 students at the high school. That proved to be wrong. The projected growth when we did a student generation analysis in 2018 was 2,700 kids. And we are now projecting that the high school will be 2,900 to 3,050 students. And that's because of infill projects, inaccuracies in the 3 specific plans, already approved master plans. You know, there were a lot of approvals for a certain number, and they built another number, and now they're claiming they want to be able to build what they were totally approved for. We don't have an ability to really stop that. So all of that is going to make Mountain House High School larger. We think that at 2,900, those 15 classrooms will significantly absorb the student growth. Oops, hit the wrong button. And then finally, space solutions. 8 portables in 2023 protects the 7-period day, so 70% of our high school students could not take 6 periods, but 7 periods. The Mountain House High School project that opens next year, 15 permanent classrooms, 13 traditional classrooms, 2 labs. And we negotiated the 19 acres for the fields, 6 acres coming soon. The funding chase, I went over this before, but all of those things listed there, we will continue to have to do in order to beat the challenges that we face where funding is not available and schools have to be built. And this is an important one. All funds that come in will be needed. There will not be extra funds to give to a developer to early pay off a developer fee. Every penny we get is needed, and it still won't be enough to do all the great things we want to do, which is why we need to keep fighting. And the reality is, in 1998, they said the district would be 9,400 students, 7,000 K-8, 2,400 at the high school. I projected this a couple of years ago, but I believe the district will reach over 11,000, possibly over 12,000, with approximately 8,750 at K-8 and 3,000 at the high school. Again, comparable districts to us are Dublin, Palo Alto, and Pleasanton. Our test scores are already with them, but those student populations, that's for anybody who wants to move to the community, they ought to anticipate the community becoming that. So with that, I finished my presentation. Are there any questions? I know I've gone a long time.
I've got a question, Madam President. Just for clarification, a clarifying question. When the developers say they built us a school or they gave us money to build a school, isn't the fact that they're loaning us money that we need to pay back with interest and not low interest rates either?
That is correct. There is no giving. I'll say it this way. Developers are necessary. They take risks. And that risk, they can go bankrupt and they can make a lot of money. They see the world as, I'm going to make as much money and spend as little money, and that's how they see it. What we deal with is a range of characters, but it kind of answers your question, right? From amiable professor types who generally understand they have to play with us, and though they try to squeeze us, we always work out a deal, to Machiavellian with draconian practices and zero-sum outcomes. So when you're dealing with characters on that range and they say they gave you something, that might be self-aggrandizement on their part, but the reality is they don't give anything. What they do is they complain about having to front money. They get a significant amount of interest, and they don't give us credit for paying off our bills.
And just to follow up, although they get paid back, they're still difficult to get money out of in the first place, to loan us money in the first place.
That is correct. So the entity the district won a fight with regarding the $52 million at the high school no longer works for for CalPERS, and CalPERS no longer owns the community investment. So I feel like I can speak frankly about them. It was their position that we should have a portable high school. It was their position we should have no theater. It was their position the kids should do with less, and so they could get more. And when they gave the $52 million, they did nothing but complain. They were bitter. They set up all kinds of obstacles, and they couldn't get past the fact that the district stood up to them. So to answer that, yes.
Thank you. And I might add that the board at that time did a Herculean effort to get Mountain House High School built. I recall at the time myself and other board members telling that developer that we'd sooner not build a high school than put a bunch of portables together and say that's the high school.
That is correct.
I've got a lot of questions, I think, probably being the newest board member. So first, I want to commend, I think, yourself and the district staff for not only doing a great job of educating existing students, but having a completely second responsibility to manage construction of new projects and deal with everything that you just described. So I think there's a lot of school districts that exist in our state and across the country that don't have to deal with new construction, and they have their hands tied with just running schools, which would be great in our community too, where if we didn't have this other, kind of responsibility. So I just want to commend, the districts and staff and past boards on dealing with this issue as well. Okay, I'm going to say comments and questions. So this is going to be a little bit of rambling. So I apologize to yourself and then anyone who watches this later. Can you clarify CFD funding? I think on the initial slide for definitions was separate from Melrose. On a later slide, it had it in parentheses for Melrose. Can you differentiate the two, and can you specify whether it's for buildings, the structure only? And I'm going to assume that this is the answer. I just want a clarification that it's not used for operating expenses for the district.
Correct. So I kind of blended those. The Melrose is the tax. The tax goes to the county. The CFD is the rules in which that money can be then brought back to the district and pay for a capital project, in this case, a public capital project of a school. And so it's a mechanism to protect the district and the community's taxes from shenanigans.
Okay. Is that when I pay $1 on my taxes for Melrose, does that dollar come back in whole to the district, or?
It would, but when we sell the bonds, that money goes to the investor then, and the investor gives us a chunk of money to pay for construction up front. So that's how so they're getting a long-term investment. We're getting a pile of money to build the school.
Okay. I think in our past neighborhoods, it seems to me that we've always built schools after houses get built. So some houses get built in the neighborhood, and then maybe a year or something later, or 2 years later, then a school goes built. Is that still the case planned for both the expansion at Cordes potentially and for the neighborhoods north of Byron?
So the reason that happens is we don't have any money, and we can't sell the bonds until so when it's developing, they want the investors pay the highest yield when the model homes are starting to be built. So it really comes down to, it's not really a plan. It's we determine the date the school needs to open, and we start moving backwards. And when we get to the decision on the design of the school, that's when we start trying to figure out the funding part, and then it comes together that way. So I wish it was that as simple as you just said, like, okay, so this is here, so now we're going to do this. But we know when we want to open the school, 2026. And so in May, we're going to break ground and we're going to build really, really fast, and we're going to get that school open. We still have not identified, we know where the funding's coming from, but we haven't gone through the process to get it yet, because it's still not fully developed to get the highest yield. Did that answer your question?
to some extent. So we should expect, though, that houses will be built. We will have families in those homes that will go to schools outside of that neighborhood while that neighborhood
That is
school
correct.
being,
And that's why we have an overflow
being
process.
built. Okay. Can you, I'm going to ask a simplistic question. Why are mitigation fees, which are fees per home that's built, not enough to fund a school that's in that neighborhood? Why is the system not set up so that, hey, you're going to build a $60 million school in this neighborhood? We're going to ensure that all the homes that are built in this neighborhood are charged a fee to provide for that school. What's the reason?
Simple
behind
answer would be there'd have to be an accelerator that's agreed upon, that's applied to each house. So as houses are built out over time, those fees would have to go up. So the cost to build Cordis and the cost to build Costa, which were opened very close to each other, the cost of construction for Cordis was by square foot significantly smaller than Costa. So you would have to have an accelerator to reach the amount of money you needed in Costa to build an equal school.
And is the mitigation fee set in the mitigation agreement, or is that a...
Yeah, it's based on, and this, we have a consultant that does this, so I won't embarrass myself, but it's RMA, and they do a calculation and tax analysis, and Goodwin Consulting does that for us. So I can get you specifics, but I won't even venture into that space.
Less interested in the number. I'm wondering if when you sign a mitigation agreement, does it specify the number, which then when you go build a school 10 years later, you're now relying on a number that was set 10 years ago.
So I'll be real clear.
Sure.
The mitigation agreement running this place was signed in 1998 when the school district was one school. And that's when the rules of engagement began. Now there's been amendments, right?
Yep.
But that principle of Mello-Roos and state funds, 1998.
Okay.
So that's and the same rules apply.
Isn't there legal limits to how much developer fees we can charge?
I believe that to be true, but I wouldn't want to go any further than that. I think there is a cap. But I was only answering on the only way to keep pace with inflation of construction would to have an accelerator on the fees. That was why I brought that up.
The number in neighborhoods A and B, I think you stated was 1,085. And now I think if my math was right, it's somewhere north of 1,300 with what we estimate.
Correct.
Right? Okay. When the county and the city council now take up rezoning applications, what process or what place does the district have in that decision, if any?
Some approvals have already happened. Some approvals are the result of long ago approvals, or some have already been approved long ago. I guess we could go to a planning commission if there was so I'll give you an example. There was a rumor, it's a rumor, I want to emphasize it's a rumor, that you have to have even higher density housing when they put in the train depot that's going to be associated with the ACE train line. And therefore, those numbers were going to change in terms of the number of houses, which would increase the student generation. It would be in a scenario like that where we would be able to say, absolutely not, there's no room. Another example is there's a project that's supposed to be apartments in the south part of College Park that would generate about 100 students.
And I believe those apartments were rezoned from industrial.
Correct, to townhouses. But now there's a rumor, again, a rumor, not proven by data. I've never had a meeting about this. They want to change that again. So that would be where we would be able to say, we've planned for this, you can't change it. And now, the purpose of the lunch that we had with the Board of Supervisors gentlemen was to say, these are pressures the district's being put under, and these are the limits that we have. And we're giving you a heads up that things might be coming your way if there has to be a county supervisor decision on a plan, right? It may be that we're at odds with a builder and it goes forward to, those kind of things can happen. It would happen at the planning commission first, but I mean, all those things happen in communities across the state.
Okay. My comment is, I've been vocal about rezoning and not having taken into account a lot of these implications that we're now playing catch up with at the district level. And I agree with you that I believe the builders and developers will try to rezone more and more, right? So we saw 3 parcels from commercial recently turn from commercial to residential. Those students now that don't exist today will need to go to a high school that wasn't built for the, accounted for in the master plan. Same thing will happen if those 600 or 800 homes become market rate north of Byron as well,
Correct.
right? So we tend to keep playing catch up with our schools based on decisions to rezone elsewhere in this city. And for me, this is my message to the city council is those things need to be taken into account. The community needs to know that when we rezone, we don't currently have facilities to take these future students that don't yet exist. And we then continually will be playing this chase for funding to build on land that we don't own or that we don't have yet. And then we will have potentially more situations like the high school where you have, kind of a segregated campus in between with homes in between, because you're going to basically have to find land to build something to accommodate for other students. So I think, it's unfortunate the situation I think that we're in. It is great to have more people here. We need more housing across the state. I'm fully aware of it. My point would be to make it a thoughtful, conscious decision on how we plan that rezoning, if necessary, so that we can have schools that meet the needs of our students. And I will be off my soapbox in a second. In those 3 parcels that were zoned from commercial to residential, if you look at the master plan of Mountain House, it was to have walking distance schools. And now we've put homes in areas that don't have schools, and they got to cross Great Valley or Ornato or other major streets in order to get to a school. So, it's unfortunate we're building homes in areas that don't have schools and don't have places for schools. It doesn't make sense to put a school in each of those 3 areas. And yet we continue to think that, more houses will solve a lot of problems. So I just wanted to make that clear. That's on me. So sorry, still got more questions. When we build future schools, when I lived in Chicago, there was a Blue Cross Blue Shield building was built to 20 stories or 25 stories. And then a few years later, they actually built 20 stories on top of it. And it was one of the architectural things of how you build it so that you could build further. Have we ever thought about building schools in a way that allows us to build a 3rd story should we get an expansion? So is there anything that we need to do to future-proof ourselves a little bit? Because it's hard to get more land, but potentially you could build higher. Is that something that exists within the school construction realm?
Wow. The easiest way to build a building is to put it on the ground through the Department of School Architecture and all of the regulations. 2-story buildings are more expensive than 1-story buildings, and a 3-story building is going to be, especially in that scenario, would be more complicated. Anything's possible, but it would be a show me the money decision, and I would predict that the cost benefit analysis wouldn't bear out to go up.
I would just like to add my 2 cents to that. I believe that it would be cheaper to build whatever you were going to stack on top of the first 2 stories next to it to begin with than to build the building on the bottom substantial enough to add a 3rd story. In other words, if you had a 950 student school, instead of building the bottom of the school to add a 3rd story for another 300 or 400 kids, if you just built that building next to it and to begin with, I think it would be just as cheap as building that part of the school in anticipation of going up later. In a case like Chicago, where the land values and space considerations are probably way different than Mountain House, that probably makes sense.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I guess my question is, when we run out of land, right? So if we were building these schools north of Byron to say, hey, we think maybe they're going to have 600 more homes that turn market rate, and we might need more space, and maybe we don't have. If we have land, great. And I agree with you. It's absolutely cheaper to build, 1-story buildings or 2-story buildings. But if we have to future-proof ourselves to say, hey, we don't know if we need, that school to be 1,200 students in the future, and we're going to need another place, and we don't know where to put them.
Here's the limitation. That reverse R that's up here,
reverse.
They can't build anything else. There's no CEQA approvals. There's no any approvals outside of that boundary there. And so,
Which boundary? Sorry.
So do you see this, the boundary of the entire picture? It looks like a lowercase r.
Okay.
Okay. That's the only thing that's approved. That's the master plan. Each one of those villages are built out with the exception of College Park and north of Byron Highway. There's a little room for a little bit more growth. So the scenario you're laying out, there's no more space in E, F, G, H, C, and D. But in A, B, there's going to be a pressure point. And so we will have to build an additional building of some size. There is a potential to put some additional building at Hanson where we were going to build a preschool and chose not to. Cordis is not going to have any room. So that's just, the limitation on some of expansion is that picture.
So I'll take Cortez as an example, right? So in Cortez, if you look at towards the east, if that commercial space, and they decide to rezone that to residential, and we have no space in Cortez to put these students,
we would have to say there's absolutely no more room. I now understand your question.
Right.
The commercial flips,
Right.
So the 3 properties you reference, that developer already had an approval. So when the original approval came in, they were told they had X amount of houses they could build. They built Y, which was less than X. And now they're coming back and say, you approved X, and I want to put them in these 3 areas. So they hadn't exceeded their original approval number. They just were, those 3 approvals took them to what they were promised in the first place. That's different than flipping those commercial. If they do that, it's not going to work.
and I think the same thing would happen if they flip the the age restricted to some market rate, at least north of Byron.
That's why I brought up the 870 to put it out there now.
Okay. Let me see what else. The north of Byron or the student generation numbers north of Byron. Do we feel that that's a more accurate calculation than what was done in College Park?
Yes, and the reason is all of the student generation numbers have been almost spot on accurate. Cordis has been off a little, but that's because they started putting bigger houses on smaller lots. And so that changed the number just a little bit, which is why it's tied at Cordis. College Park wasn't really part of the master plan. It was, remember I said the Great Recession blew it up. So it's always been known that it was going to be a mess, and it is.
Okay.
In the sense that all of these things that were accurate in the past aren't necessarily accurate today for just College Park.
Okay. The high school, how many students do we expect will be supported by the 15 new classrooms? Does that get us to the 3,000 that we...
No, we think, okay, again, it depends on program. So this is just a base number, right? So we just kind of take the number of classrooms times 32 and you get 400 plus kids, right? So at 2,400 plus 400 plus, that gets you to 2,900. That's 15 classrooms. But when if you keep the 8 portables, then that changes the calculus. If we add a couple of programs that are really popular, but require huge numbers of kids or small numbers of kids, then it changes the calculus. So I'm always speaking generally. We think we'll get close. I think we'll have to build one more building on the high school campus if it gets to 3050 as opposed to 2850. And we will see how that goes.
Okay. Thank you very much for indulging me.
Yeah. Any other questions?
So I don't know if it's a question or it's like kind of a concern because you mentioned how we have to have another state construction bond to get funding, but I was noticing with the previous one that was passed, a lot of the money, a lot of those billions are going to like modernization projects, and a lot less is going to like new school construction. And the trajectory of California, and I've heard this since I've been on the board, declining enrollment, and old schools, and so. Like when the majority of school districts are declining enrollment and have old schools that need modernization, how are we going to make sure that the state construction fund gives us the money in the way we need it?
So it's a good question. There was during COVID, there was a budget decision made that hurt us but help flatten declining enrollment schools. So we had a big fight with the state about that. About 20% of the districts are growing and 80% are flat or declining. So you can expect in any state construction bond, modernization is going to be really important because there's so many aging schools. But there's always going to be a need for growth. I can just tell you that $3.3 billion will be gone like that, and especially with the construction cost escalations. So we already need, I literally, there's a lobbyist that worked for CalPERS that has benefited us. And I sent him an email yesterday saying, okay, where are we at with the bond sale? And he's one of those access points. Mr. Pombo working for CSBA, and they have a lot of say with all that stuff. CASH, the California Coalition of Adequate School Housing. But it really just comes down to is every 4 years there has to be a new construction bond.
Okay. Yeah, so Trustee Pombo, how maybe you know this, how can we leverage CSBA when they also represent those 80% of the districts and we're like kind of the minority voice in that?
Good question. I've been in the ear of everyone I can get a hold of at CSBA to champion the need of the growing school districts to have a voice. Because as you said, the majority of the school districts are declining enrollment, and unfortunately the pie is only so big. And if you give a bigger piece of pie to the declining enrollments, by definition, the growing school districts get a smaller piece of pie. So it's just something that we have to keep in front of CSBA and in front of our elected officials, that they need to help the declining enrollment schools, but at the same time, they need to protect the interests of the increasing school districts to balance things out. And it's tough because there's always a fight over not only construction funds, but also the LCFF funds to make sure that increasing districts get a fair piece of that, as well as districts that don't have the unduplicated students to get the concentration and supplemental grants that are big components of LCFF.
I don't have a question, but I really want to thank you for the presentation. It was very concise, yet complicated, and I'm sure that it took a lot of time to put it together. And I know that you do this on a daily basis, and you've been doing it for years. And you mentioned the word magic, and I think you've been doing that to get this money, to pulling money out of the hat. And so thank you for doing that. Again, I think it's very concise, and it's a great education for all of us on how we get the schools funded and how it's not an easy thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a comment and a clarification. So again, I would echo Preston and say that it was a very good presentation, so much of details, data-oriented. During the training that I attended on Saturday, they were actually closing schools. And I was discussing about us opening schools. And of course, I did share that we have our own pros and cons about, the exponential growth that we are having. And one of it is, the funding that you're trying to work on. And I actually wrote the word magic here, as Trustee, President Willie mentioned. And yes, I have seen you talk about all the 9 solutions that you presented here. And definitely you have been working magic. So thank you so much for that. My clarification question was about, you mentioned that we are going to be strict on the certificate of compliance, right? So I would like to understand, did we use the same certificate of compliance pattern earlier, or are we going to start to apply it?
So it's a really good question. So each one of these village schools has a total story to it, and all of them are complicated. It's been my experience. Well, first of all, we've had a couple of schools that it worked out really relatively simply, and it went. But when things get tense, and they're already have built out most of the houses, then holding a certificate of compliance has no teeth because they already built the houses. So where we're at with College Park and north of Byron Highway is they really haven't built any houses. I mean, they have models, right? So because I haven't given that away, that's my permission that they can build what they want, then I can say, you have to give us what we need or you don't get this, and they don't get to make money until that works out. So I used to get all geared up like it's a big game and go fired up into these meetings. And then I realized is until the deadline comes, it's all perfunctory. It's all just a kind of a conversation. You get the details worked out, but the decisions happen when they're going to lose money or something bad's going to happen to them. And then all of a sudden the cooperation happens. And so by being ahead of it, because there are no houses, we have leverage. And it really feels like for the first time, because usually the houses are going and we're just celebrating getting the previous school built and paid for.
So we're going to start leveraging the certificate of compliance method starting from Neighbor Road J, the school.
Yeah, so all of north of Byron, all of the rest of College Park. And it really, if you want to play, you got to pay. And it's ironically, they love this. And I'm like, man, wouldn't it be just easier to say, this is how we're going to figure it out? But there's this whole kabuki theater thing that happens. So we have leverage, we have needs, we've defined them, we have agreements with builders, and we're going to use those models so that everybody gets treated consistently, which is all part of this. And we get more money coming in.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I just say one more? I just have to say one more thing. I just want to thank I wasn't on the board when this happened, but I really do want to thank the board for going after the Measure L general obligation bond, because when my board report reflects on some of the benefits that we have seen because we have that bond, which is we have a high school theater, we have an orchestra, and so thank you to everybody who took that on and got that done. And may we have the force and strength to keep that magic with us, Dr. Nicholas. Thank you so much for everything you've done.
So last point, the tennis courts, the aquatic center, the Learning Commons library, the CTE wing, the theater, were all paid for by Measure L. Imagine the high school if that was just bark. And with that, thank you.
I'd just like to make one more comment and then a follow-up question. I agree with the rest of the board that was a very good presentation. Even though it was long, it was concise. My question is,
I think I added to the lengthiness.
How do we get the public to see it and understand some of the facts that are contained in it before they go to social media and spread a bunch of misinformation and conjecture that is baseless?
I believe that's a sociological question, of which is beyond my expertise. We've had a few kerfuffles over the years, and we have educated people. I think part of what the answer to the question is it would be nice if everybody would take a deep breath and didn't get a sense of reward from just saying stuff, and would reach out to the experts, whether it's a principal or board member or superintendent or our great staff. It would make the world go round much more smoothly.
I do think this is a good presentation. Even for me, it was very educational, right, to go through. So I think even just getting information out there. I think part of the problem with this topic is you only care when it's related to the high school or a house you're about to buy. And the folks that are coming into the community, the vast majority of them that are buying in these new neighborhoods where these complications exist, don't live in Mountain House, right? I'd say at least 90+% are coming from outside of our community. And their communication method is through the builder, which is going to sell them on a second Safeway plus the school and a whole bunch of other stuff, right? And that's part of the challenge, is those members, even if we did a really good communication campaign within our community, we're probably not going to reach the folks who, once they buy the house, are going to be super upset because of X, Y, Z, and all these other things, right? So it's an interesting endeavor to go after. I'm all for it. I don't know what the solution is.
Well, I do agree that there's a lot of misinformation given to people before they buy a house in Mountain House or anywhere else for that matter.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we are on item 9, item B, district enrollment report.
8,014.
Thank you, and grab some water. That was a long lecture you gave. Item C, district maintenance and operations report. I think I see Director LeGrand. Thank you.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. No operations report tonight. So a maintenance report. We had a very productive winter break. Got a bunch of work orders done. In addition to that, we had our semi-annual kitchen hoods all inspected at the sites. We had all of our semi-annual fire inspections done at all the sites over the break. On the 20th, the fire department came out and did their annual fire inspection at the high school. That went pretty well. It hasn't rained for a while, and there's no rain in the forecast. So what we've done is turn on the water one day a week at a few key spots, some of the bigger fields, the baseball field at Cordis, both the fields at Costa. We don't want them to fall behind. If it starts raining anytime soon, we'll go ahead and shut that off again. The pool's been behaving itself pretty good. We're still having problems with the vacuum, getting that fixed properly. A few of the lane lines broke, and the maintenance guys are fixing those. Both heaters are working good. Chemical balance is good. pH is good. So that's all good news. We didn't have our EPIC interns over the winter break, but we got them back last Thursday. We have 3 this spring on Thursdays all day. Basically what they're going to be doing now, we have to get the fields ready for spring sports, softball, baseball. We have to get Coors baseball field. And I'm told they might use Bethany for a couple games. We have to get Bethany ready as well, Bethany baseball field. Last Monday, I had my facilities meeting with the high school principal and the athletic director. That went very well. And our next meeting is in February. I talked before when I was up here about replacement playground parts for Cuesta. Those have been ordered. They're not coming in until February, though. So once they get here, we will install those. Update on our projects. The new classroom building at the high school is going really well. If you've driven by, you've seen both buildings are making good progress. We had our online construction meeting last Wednesday. Upcoming Wednesday, we meet in person. We're still on schedule for substantial completion end of June. And I was told by Thor in our last meeting that furniture's coming right after the 4th of July. So no pressure, Adam, over there. The windscreen saga at the high school is over finally. The tennis courts are done. The pool is done. That crossed it off the list. That took forever, but it's done. The kitchen remodel project, we're behind schedule on this project. I was up before talking about the piping in the ground and replaced. I bought a little show and tell today. This is the piping we're pulling on the ground, completely rusted, falling apart. It's been in the ground 18 something, what'd you say, maybe?
Rutherford B. Hayes.
Okay, anyway. It's been in the ground for a long time, right? So it's falling apart. Rather than try and patch it, just ripped it all out. It wasn't very much to replace. The existing electrical panel was undersized for all the new equipment that Bernie's putting in there. It was about half of what was needed, so we had to put a new electrical service in there, and that's done. The wall patching is, all the walls are patched, and the painting is about 75% done. There's one section on the north wall. It's too rough, needs skim coated, repainted, and that'll be done. The new hoods are installed over where the stoves are gonna go, and a smaller hood over where the dishwashers are gonna go on the other wall. The existing acoustical ceiling that was in there would not meet health code standards, so we had to tear that down and put a new drop ceiling in with washable ceiling tiles. I've never seen those before. We'll find what those look like. So the start on the grid Monday, they finished the grid yesterday, and the existing lights we had in there were new, so we were able to reuse those. Those got dropped in the grid today and are getting wired in. So we expect to have this project wrapped up by mid-February, about another month. So I'll go on with that. Upcoming items, I have to work on Monday. We have some vendors coming in and do some repairs. We're getting new window coverings, 2 places at the high school, 4 rooms at Wickland, and 2 rooms at Lammersville, getting some, they like to do it when the kids aren't there, obviously. So I'm gonna come on Monday and do that. And then we have a vendor come in and repair the science countertops at Wickland. The metal band is torn off in several places. That's getting fixed as well. Staffing update. We currently have 2 openings. We have a maintenance position that we hope to interview for next week.
And then we had a resignation on Monday. Our admin secretary resigned. She's leaving as of a couple days ago. And we wish her well. And happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board?
No, but great job. That was a lot of work that you just described. So thank you and the team for executing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 10, action items. Item A, consider approval of the 2024-2025 Expanded Learning Opportunities Program ELAP plan. Staff report, please.
Yes, as they continue to pass down rules and expectations involving ELOP, we are supposed to do an annual approval. We probably should have brought this a little earlier, but we're still meeting all the provisions. So this is just a expectation from the state.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions from the board?
Move to approve the 2024-2025 Expanded Learning Opportunities Program ELOP plan.
Can I ask a question? Is there a later presentation on the size and phases of enrollment?
I believe last year in the spring we gave an update. Yeah, so we're mid-year. So right now I know there's been a drop in population, and then it's going to go back up with people on the wait list. So we typically would do something more around spring
To plan for the summer and
yeah. So to lay out what we've done this year, what we learned, and then what the plan is. Yeah.
Okay, I will second that motion.
With a motion by Trustee Pombo, a second by Trustee Modi, student preferential vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with 5 ayes and no noes. Item B, consider approval of the 2024-2025 independent auditor selection. Staff report, please.
Yeah, we're beginning a 3-year cycle. There was an RFP process overseen and run by the county. The competitor, there's only one competitor for this selection, and this is the selection that we are recommending.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
I'll ask a question. Is there a thought of after so many cycles with a single auditor, we should try a different one just to get a different lens on our books?
Yeah, that's the second board member that's asked me that question. So I believe I've got this right, but the experts are over there. I think you get 2 3-year cycles, and then you got to go to a new person. And this is the second, 3rd-year cycle. So this, when we're done in 3 years, it'll be 6 years.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I'll move to approve the 2024-2025 independent auditor selection.
I second.
On a motion by Trustee Olson and a second by Trustee Daniel, student preferential vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with 5 ayes and no noes.
Sorry, can I ask a clarifying question? Does the agenda item have to have the amount in the motion?
Not necessarily. No, I mean, I think it's in the.
Okay.
Yeah.
Item C, consider approval of the annual audit report ending June 30th, 2024. Staff report, please.
Yeah, the key point to this is there were no findings. Generally, the cycle goes first interim, second interim. They'll close out the budget, but really, it's can we pay our bills this year and the outgoing 2 years? And so, good job to Assistant Superintendent Grijalva, Director Kaiser, and their team. Good work.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Move to approve of the annual audit report ending June 30th, 2024.
Second.
On a motion by Trustee Pombo and a second by Trustee Daniel, student preferential vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with 5 ayes and no noes. Item D, consider approval of a contract with Pioneer Healthcare Services, LLC, for an occupational therapist for the 2024-2025 school year. Total cost $69,920. Staff report, please.
Yes, this happens multiple times during the year. We have a need, we don't have someone to fill it, or we have more need than we have to fill. And in this case, this will allow us to cover what we need for a special education and occupational therapist.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
I'll move to approve the contract with Pioneer Healthcare Services, LLC, for an occupational therapist for the 2024-2025 school year. Total cost $69,920.
Second.
On a motion by Trustee Olson and a second by Trustee Modi, student preferential vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with 5 ayes and no nos. Item E, consider approval of a contract with 3 Chords Incorporated, Therapy Travelers LLC, for a virtual speech and language pathologist for the 2024-2025 school year. Total cost $79,120. Staff report,
Yeah,
please.
very similar to the previous one. We have the need. This is the best way to fill that need. We recommend approval.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
Is there a thought process behind virtual versus someone similar to the OT who would be on site, I'm assuming?
I think we start with a simpler thing, which is we have the need and who can fill it. And this is, as it was explained by Director Manley, and he can clarify if you want any further follow-up. But there was a complication, and then these IEPs, the IEs, all these things that are happening. This is the best way to get the service as quickly as possible with shortages.
Okay, appreciate it.
Move to approve a contract with 3 Chords Inc. and Therapy Travelers LLC for a virtual speech and language pathologist for the 2024-2025 school year. Total cost $79,120.
Second.
Based on a motion by trustee Pombo and a second by trustee Olson, student preferential vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with 5 ayes and no nos. Item F, consider approval of course outlines at Mountain House High School. Staff report.
Yeah, we do this every year. There are recommendations from the high school to expand a program or a need that shows up. So we go through a process. It's led by curriculum and instruction and Assistant Superintendent Sharp. Teachers are involved, high school administration. These particular ones we are bringing forward. I do want to note ethnography and society is a class that was a mandate from the state. There's timelines associated with that. This allows us to meet those timelines. There's also some potential slowdown on those timelines due to whether or not it's funded in this year's budget. So we're looking into that, and our questions and inquiries have not been answered yet. But this will allow us to take a step. A group of teachers, Mr. Shum, curriculum and coordinators all worked very hard on this. And again, when it's a state mandate, it carries a different tune than when it's, we want to expand a music class. So they worked very hard on this. So I recommend approval of all of that, but I did want to note that that meets one of the state requirements.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Do we have additional staff to support the new proposals and the revisions?
Yes. So every year in the spring, around March, we do what's called one-stop staffing, and that's where the principal of a school, in particular, in most of these cases, in all these cases, it's the high school, meet with HR, administrative services, and other district staff to review their needs. And out of that review, so you have growth, you have what they want to do, and what we can afford. And out of that comes a recommendation for staffing. So some of these classes will be covered by people who already work there. Some of these classes might be covered by a 6/5 where they work an extra period, a teacher does. And some of these might require a recommendation to hire additional staff.
Thank you.
I would just like to say thank you to all the staff who worked hard to get these courses ready for us to approve. And also I'd like to thank the district for always expanding opportunities for our students. I think it's great that all of our CTE programs and other are continually growing and offering new opportunities for our students.
Any other comments or questions?
Move to approve course outlines at Mountain House High School.
Second.
On a motion by trustee Daniel and a second by trustee Olson, student preferential vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with 5 ayes and no nos. Item G, consider approval of the 2025-2026 budget development calendar. Staff report, please.
Yes, this is an annual expectations part of the process, so we're bringing forward the calendar and we recommend approval.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Move to approve the 2025-2026 budget development calendar.
Second.
Based on a motion by trustee Pombo and a second by trustee Daniel, student preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with 5 ayes and no noes. Item H, consider approval of the ordinance number 24-25-01, an ordinance of the Governing Board of the Lammersville Joint Unified School District levying special taxes within the Lammersville Joint Unified School District Community Facilities District number 2024-1, Mountain House School Facilities. Staff report, please.
Yes, this completes a long process supported by Chris Lynch from Jones Hall, who was our bond counsel, to properly establish our latest CFD 2024-1.
Move to approve. Sorry.
Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, go ahead. Trustee
Thank you.
Daniel.
Move to approve the ordinance number 24-25-01, an ordinance of the Governing Board of the Lammersville Joint Unified School District levying special taxes within the Lammersville Joint Unified School District Community Facilities District number 2024-1, Mountain House School Facilities.
Second.
Does this require a roll call?
Based on a motion by trustee Daniel and second by trustee Modi, student preferential vote, please.
Aye.
And we'll do a roll call vote.
Lisa Boulay,
Aye.
Vanita Daniel,
Aye.
Samik Modi,
Aye.
Stephanie Olson,
Aye.
David Pombo.
Aye.
Motion carries with 5 ayes and no noes. Item I, consider approval of facilities lease agreement for the Neighborhood J School, Neighborhood K School, and District Support Facilities, general construction contract with Robellin Contracting Incorporated, $213,212. Staff report, please.
Yes, first I'd like to introduce Adam Villacara, who is the principal lead of a number of projects, Hanson, Cordis, Costa, District Office Expansion, the warehouse. And this is pre-construction services, so they kind of get organized and give us the cost starts to pull together and all that, so we can then build a construction contract for Neighborhood J School. That when we say district support facilities, I'm talking specifically of the 19 acres and the 6 acres of that we've been talking about for quite some time now. But also they could support additional things, like if we needed to expand offices to support the district's needs, an additional warehouse, a courtyard. I mean, I'm not promising all these things. I'm just simply saying, other than the 19 acres, we're going to have more needs, and this not specific to the pre-construction services, but that's what this could include. But specifically these things listed here.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
Move to approve the facilities lease agreement for the Neighborhood J School, Neighborhood K School, and District Support Facilities, general construction contract with Roblin Contracting Incorporated for $213,212.
Second.
Based on a motion from trustee Olson and a second from trustee Daniel, student preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with 5 ayes and no noes. Item 11, calendar. Item A, Wednesday, January 22nd, the Safety Committee meeting will be at 3:45 in the Professional Development Center. Item B, Thursday, January 23rd, the District English Learner Advisory Committee will meet at 6:30 here in the district office boardroom. Item C, Tuesday, January 28th, the District Parent Advisory Committee will be meeting at 6 p.m. in the Professional Development Center. Item D, Friday, January 31st, the District Honors Music Concert will happen at 6 o'clock at the Mountain House High School Theater. Item E, Wednesday, February 5th at 2025 is the next regular governing board meeting, 7 o'clock here in the district office boardroom. In a moment, we will adjourn to closed session where we discuss the following items. Item A, Public Employee Discipline Dismissal Release Complaint, Government Code Section 54957. Item B, Confidential Student Discipline Matter pursuant to Education Code Sections 48900, 49060, and 20 U.S.C. Section 1232G, Pupil Personnel, Ed Code 48918, for 1 student expulsion. And item C, Conference with Real Property Negotiators, Government Code Section 54956.8.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
On a motion by trustee Pombo and a second by trustee Olson, student trustee preferential vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with 5 ayes and no nos. Thank you, everyone.